Today's discussion will be presented in 3 sections since we are recording it for a radio broadcast on Federal News Radio 1500 AM. You're welcome to post questions and comments during the session, and we'll try to answer them online. I'd like to introduce our moderator, Jason Miller, Executive Editor of Federal News Radio.
Welcome to the panel. My guests today are Mark Easton, the Deputy Chief Financial Officer at the Defense Department, Tim Gribben, the Chief Financial Officer and Associate Administrator of Performance Management at the Small Business Administration, Dorothy Aronson, the Chief Information Officer at the National Science Foundation, Mike Whitglow, the Deputy Chief Financial Officer at the National Science Foundation, and Sam Hughes, a consulting leader in the U.S. government practice at EY. Welcome to the discussion. Before we get started, let me set some context. Federal Chief Financial Officers are right in the middle of 2 big technological trends, the cloud and data analytics. Look no further than the President's management agenda. Of the 14 management priorities, CFOs easily have a major role in half of them. Let's just take a look at one of them, federal IT spending transparency. The managing partners are 3 CIOs and 3 CFOs. The goals under the federal IT spending transparency focus on implementing technology business management, or TBM, to improve business outcomes, to increase efficiency of IT investments, and to enable IT benchmarking. All 3 of these are about collecting data, understanding data, and then putting that data to use to make better decisions. If you look at other PMA priorities, such as grants accountability or eliminating improper payments, all those goal leaders are from the CFO community, and there's a strong technology and data presence in each of those. At the same time, there's a lot of desire and opportunity to make better use of data in the financial management community. A 2017 survey from the Association of Government Accountants found 44% of the CFOs who responded say they're using data and evidence to make decisions. Additionally, only 14% of the CFO respondents say they see their offices providing analytical support to the agency, while 25% said that they see their office as providing mostly compliance, and 21% said their office is providing mostly transactional services. So as you can see, there's the need for this continuous integration of data, technology. It's driving agencies toward better decision making, but at the same time, agencies need to consider how they design, implement, and utilize these tools to better support financial management. And that's why we have our guests on our panel today who are going to tell us how they're doing that. Mike, let me turn to you to start with. You bring 2 points of view to this discussion because you were at OMB quite a while in the Controller's office, and now you're Deputy CFO at National Science Foundation. The role of the CFO is changing in a big way. Tell me maybe how you're seeing this change.
Well, first, let me start off by saying Happy New Year. This is October 1, a big day for accountants and government.
Was there cake or party?
Both. I mean, we have some cake. So we had a breakfast this morning back at NSF to recognize employees. But Jason, you're right. For years, the CFO community has talked about how to move from backroom to boardroom. But now this is just not talk. I mean, the time is now, and this discussion is especially timely as we approach the 30th anniversary of the CFO Act in 2020. The traditional CFO role, as we know it, is shifting from reporting, compliance, financial statements, to running systems, to a new approach where CFOs help the agency derive strategy, value, risk management, providing overall financial management leadership to the organization to manage our taxpayer resources effectively.
I'll have to keep in mind 2020, so another year or so is the 30th anniversary of the CFO Act. The new approach you talk about, how do you see that kind of developing within your own organization? Is it a people issue? Is it, and we'll get to all of this, but give me that 50,000-foot view.
I see it as a transformational effort, but very important to the people. And I think we're going to get into a lot of topics like maybe robotic processing innovations, but people is at the heart of that. And I think the primarily is the best motivator. A lot of the things we're going to talk about today is really geared at making reducing workload, providing more, job opportunities and value and important work for our federal employees.
Dorothy, you're seeing the changing CFO world from a different perspective of the CIO's world and how you interact. Maybe talk about what you're seeing from Mike's office and how you're helping Mike kind of make that transformation.
Well, I see that the CFO office has become a leader, an innovator in adopting new technologies as they arrive. They lean forward. It's always the financial applications really that are the first to embrace technology, and so they're doing that once again with the emerging technologies. And also, I think that all people are becoming more IT-ish. So as IT infiltrates all the parts of our world, everyone has to upskill in that area. And Mike's group is leaning forward on that.
And as your work with the CFO's office continues, and you guys have to work closely, we've heard this for years, is every agency has a CXO kind of organization that you guys meet. How do you see your support for him also changing? Is it becoming more complicated, more complex, or in some ways maybe is it you're just walking down the same path together?
Well, I think there used to be, I hate to say this, more of an us and them situation between the IT people and the financial people. You know, they gave us money, they also gave us requirements, and there was always a struggle. I think that now our missions are aligned, our objectives are aligned, and we're partners. I think that my relationship with Mike and his and the CFO at NSF, Teresa Grant-Corvitz, are critical to NSF's modernization initiatives, not only in the financial area, but across the board and other mission areas as well.
So Sam, does this warm your heart to hear this? They're friends, they get along. That wasn't always the case in the CFO community. Maybe talk a little bit about what you're seeing with your clients as you're talking to your clients, and the CIO, CFO, what's the role changing for the CFO?
Absolutely. I mean, I think as both Michael and Dorothy were talking about, I mean, you really need a close partnership and collaboration between the CFO and CIO teams, particularly with the proliferation of data and analytics that are really transforming the role of the CFO organization today. I think historically, accounting has always been the core skill set of a financial organization, and that implies a backward-looking view about what happened to generate the results, and therefore finance has developed a little bit of a reputation as a back office organization. But today we're seeing more and more the finance is really driving that strategic agenda. It's more about what is our future performance going to be? What are the operational levers that we need to pull in order to deliver the results we need for our mission outcomes? And that requires not just financial data, it requires financial and operational data brought together and analyzed in new ways. So it's absolutely key that the CFO and CIO organizations are working together closely to achieve this type of analysis.
It's interesting you bring up that both of you brought up this idea of that the CFO organization was considered the back room, and I think Dorothy, you and I have been around long enough to say, well, wait a minute, the CIOs have always wanted the seat at the table. Maybe give me a sense, what's the difference today than beyond this push towards data analytics, but what's the role of the CFO has changed how? Like where do you see like what's different than if we had this conversation 5 or 10 years ago?
Well, it's interesting. If you listen to a earnings call with a commercial organization, and you listen to the questions that are being posed to the senior leadership, they are all about the future. What are your earnings going to be 12 months from now? What are your results going to be next quarter? And how do I have confidence that you're going to pull the right levers in your organization to accomplish those outcomes? And I think we're seeing much more of that mindset appearing within government organizations today, where people want to know what is the forward-looking plan, and how do we know we can derive the level of mission performance we need to with the financial resources that we have. So the finance organization is playing such a critical role now in allocating the capital resources across those programs to deliver the right mission outcomes.
That's a great point, and I think, Mark, you can relate back to it from a DoD perspective. Everything for DoD is about mission outcomes. And
Absolutely, Jason. I think the themes that have been talked about so far certainly resonate with an organization as large as DoD. We recognize, and you go back to the CFO Act back in 1990, I think that although it has materialized as more of a compliance exercise, and we've just completed our first full comprehensive audit from a Department of Defense, and so we're not quite there, but we're on the journey, a journey that the National Science Foundation, Small Business Administration have been there for a long time, and we have Ernst & Young, auditing us, as a matter of fact. But we have had, our deputy secretary, for example, came from the private sector, no public sector experience, and he went to a meeting at the Department of Defense and was expecting the CFO to have that single source of truth. And so that senior leadership commitment has been very, very important. And so our CFO is evolving. We've always had Secretary Norquist currently as our CFO, always had a seat at the table, but that seat has been oriented towards preparing the budget, program and budget in many cases. And as Sam highlighted, it's almost like you're looking through your rearview mirror from an accounting perspective. We recognize that the value is really in the financial information. And so as we pursue the audit, with senior leadership commitment, the opinion is certainly what we seek, but the value is really the quality, timeliness, and the ability to relate information to program outcomes and mission outcomes. And so the National Defense Strategy, which was issued earlier this year, for the first time, I think you see words like performance and accountability in there. And so we're able to link those things, and being able to use the data, I think, has become critically important, and to break through the stovepipes, whether they're organizational or functional stovepipes, to be able to think more as an enterprise than an individual group.
Do you get a sense that pressure, as you said, from Deputy Secretary Shanahan, who's saying, okay, where's my data? Do you see that pressure kind of changing your office too? Like, because the expectations are different versus, as you said, rear view mirror now, okay, how do we change our focus to look forward?
Absolutely, absolutely. The National Defense Strategy, has as one of its tenets really trying to reform the business. And so being able to have high quality financial information, to be able to measure our performance as we move forward has been critically important. The deputy has said, when we come to a meeting, we want to have the CFO say, this is the financial information. Let's talk about the decisions that we need to make rather than whose financial information is correct.
Tim, SBA is also going through big changes from an internal standpoint, the loan programs, the contracting programs. Maybe talk a little about your office and your work with both the CIO, but more broadly, how your office is changing.
Yeah, so I want to start to say with how the office is changing, and I think Sam echoed something that Administrator Linda McMahon said to me in one of my briefings, is that she said when I was the CEO of WWE, my conversations with the CFO were more about what's happening in the markets, what's our revenues look like, what's the return on investments, how's our real estate portfolio. She says with you, it's everything else. And that's because, and I think you just look at my title and say it's CFO and Associate Administrator for Performance Management, which has I'm also the accountable official for the Data Act. I am the Performance Improvement Officer. I have now Program Evaluation under my organization. And I'm also the newly minted Program Management Improvement Officer. So there's a lot within my organization, and I am leveraging financial and all of the performance information that's available. And I think when it stems back to what we were talking about with the relationship between the CFO and the CIO, and at SBA in the past, when I first joined SBA, it was two separate organizations, a lot of distrust between both. We always thought the CIO's budget was a black hole and we didn't know what we were getting for it. They thought we were holding back. They didn't know really the financial picture. Maria Road, who is our CIO, we have a great relationship. It's a partnership that we have embarked on a technology platform together to help drive SBA forward into the next 3 to 5 years.
It's interesting that you talk about all the different hats you wear, and in many ways there's this push and the pull, right? Because you know the financial information, because you have to worry about performance of the money and how programs are using it. In one way, it makes sense to give you all those hats. But on the other hand, too many jobs, too many plates in the air. How do you find the right balance? I mean, great staff. I know that's the first answer, but what's the second answer?
The second answer is having good reports. Really, having the access to the data. Otherwise, if you're spending too much time just trying to gather the data and not enough time to really understand what that means, and being able to drive better decision making by really it's anticipating the needs of the organization going forward, and I'm a support to all the program offices.
Mark, Tim said something, access to data, and that's really where DoD is heading in so many ways. Get me the data, and then you have great data, but get me the complete data, if you will. That's really the audit's great, but in the end, it's the data that you care most about.
Absolutely, absolutely. But the audit is really a catalyst, I think, because the auditors will ask and ensure that we've captured all the data. People will refer to terms such as a universe of transactions, and that actually is providing an impetus. And I think Tim's hit the nail on the head in terms of the access to data. The DoD has tended to be fairly stovepiped, very, very mission focused, and so people have had a tendency to feel like they own the data as opposed to data as an enterprise asset. And so we are making progress, but being able to get access to the data readily, we are building a universe of transactions, as is each of the military departments. But over time, we want that to be a single universe of transactions that we can use. But there's an organizational behavior aspect that we're breaking through as we begin to accumulate more and more data, and in partnership with our CIO and our CMO.
Sam, what you're hearing from Mark and Tim and Dorothy and Mike, as well as the data pieces playing a bigger role. Maybe give me just a brief understanding of when you go visit your clients, do they have the data? Where are we at with that? Or is the government better?
Well, it's the single biggest challenge we continue to see with clients. I mean, people will talk about things like advanced analytics and machine learning and artificial intelligence and all these new leading edge analytical technologies. But when you go to the desk of that business analyst who we've tasked with, produce me a report, produce me an analysis, tell me about the future, the challenges that they face in joining data from different parts of the organization. It might be that they're stovepiped in different technology platforms. They may not have access to that data, or they may not even know that data exists in a big, complex organization. So that core issue of getting our analysts what they need to do this analysis is critical. And we think cloud is the way forward for that, because it's the only way for the large-scale databases that we're talking about to be able to provide that cross-organizational access to different databases of information, and we think cloud is going to be absolutely key to making that transformation take place.
All right, that's a good place to take a quick break. When we come back, we can jump into both data access and how to get that data accessible. We're going to take a break. You're listening to the panel discussion, Running the Numbers, How Data Analytics is Transforming Government Finance, sponsored by EY on federalnewsradio.com and 1500 AM.